Is it not odd that ISIS has not touched Israel's oil pipeline route from Kirkuk, Turkey to Israel? Which country can sell this other than Turkey? It goes on, it says the UN warned states which bought ISIS's oil, but not the states which sold it. The UN also warned that they will consider those states which bought oil from ISIS and al-Nusra as economic supporters of terrorism. So this is what happens in your free market, your global free market. Speaking of free markets, you have OPEC, basically a small consortium or cartel of oil producing, selling countries, set to hold meeting on sliding oil prices. So big problem here. Major oil body OPEC is set to hold one of its toughest meetings in Austrian capital in order to handle the sliding oil price. OPEC's mission, if you didn't know, is to coordinate the policies of the oil-producing countries, i.e. rig prices. Member states are split on what direction to take after a 30% drop in crude prices since June. Saudi Arabia is under pressure to cut production to stem the global oil glut. Russia also, along with Iran, Ecuador, and Venezuela, are planning to slash their crude oil production in a bid to stabilize crude prices. So you'd think it's just people aren't using it as much, but it says that there's a noticeable decline in oil prices mainly due to the combination of oversupply and weakening of demand growth. Others put the blame on the rise of the value of the US dollar. Market manipulation of oil prices backfire on those that started, says Russia's Putin. Says there's no guarantee that sanctions, a sharp fall in oil prices, or the depreciation of the ruble won't backfire on those who provoked it. Quote, if underchanging for energy products occurs deliberately, it also hits those who introduce these limitations. Problems arise and they will continue to grow and worsen the situation not only for Russia but for our partners, including oil and gas producing countries. It says, what is the profitability of this production like? It's from $65 to $83 a barrel. Now when the price of a barrel of oil has fallen below 80, shale gas production becomes unprofitable. So he was saying that the fall in oil prices is due to the sharp increase in the production of shale oil and gas by the United States, and this is something that we've covered at GGN as far as the United States competing and production of and sales of and exporting of oil and natural gas to basically isolate Iran economically. So it's economic warfare. It says the supply has increased from Libya. Surprising as it may seem, it produces more Iraq as well. Despite all the problems, ISIS sells oil illegally at $30 a barrel on the black market. Saudi Arabia increased its production and consumption decreased due to a period of stagnation. So he's basically saying that the situation with the oil prices doesn't hit them as hard as other people are saying, but the finance minister says Russia loses $140 billion with sanctions and falling oil prices. $40 billion a year lost because of political sanctions, and around $100 billion a year due to 30% reduction in oil prices. And a lot of you probably remember seeing this in the news: Russian warships heading to Australia, and Putin being isolated. You know, West isolates Putin over Ukraine at the G20. So at least they were trying to give that image that they're being isolated. Russia says it won't isolate itself behind an iron curtain. He didn't want to isolate itself behind a new iron curtain, which would be disastrous for the country. It's kind of what he was talking about in that last article, saying that they're able to hold their own as far as imports and falling oil prices and that, saying that they've prepared for it. Other countries, there have been periods when countries try to barricade themselves off from the rest of the world, paying a very high price for this. He says that Russia simply does not need to compete with the West and should peacefully carry out its agenda. It does seem pretty obvious that there's a proxy war going on in Ukraine. And right on the backdrop of that meeting and stuff was this media blackout as U.S. sponsors genocide in southeastern Ukraine. So it was basically genocide being carried out by the resistant fighters against Ukraine's war to exterminate the residents in Ukraine's southeast, where a majority of people are ethnic Russians. The article makes the case that this is an actual form of genocide to reduce the population for the people that voted over 80% for the Ukrainian president, who the Obama administration overthrew, and what they say is a violent CIA-paid U.S. State Department planned and run coup. The new government is trying to eliminate enough of the people who had voted for him. See, that I've actually covered this before. This is something that I had said was going to happen, which it was they were going to tie up loose ends. So they're trying to eliminate enough people who had voted for him so that the coup-imposed regime will be able to stay in power, quote, democratically with those Russia-friendly voters gone. I guess this one battalion was caught on live leak shooting civilians. Ukraine claims that Russia has 7,500 troops in Ukraine. I saw an article on Press TV about NATO expanding their forces, and Lithuania, I believe it was going to also funnel money into Ukraine and their defense forces. Cash-strapped Ukraine also plans to increase the strength of the armed forces and boost levels of arms and equipment. I'm not sure if you guys heard of this, but Israel's actually passing a bill that would label the nation as a Jewish state. So, a Jewish state bill advances, threatens to break Israel's coalition. The initially proposed change to Israeli basic laws, which would label the nation as a Jewish state, is back today, and this time without the promises of equal rights for ethnic minorities. The bill got through the cabinet today and moves on to the parliament at large for a vote. Follow-up article: planned Israeli bill would revoke residency for bad people and relatives. So basically they can expel these people and their relatives even if they've done nothing wrong, under the guise of an anti-terror measure or bill, inciting violence or through speech or activism, as well as rioters or rock throwers. Basically can be thrown out of the country, so, or just bad people. Speaking of funneling arms and that to terrorists, you have the UK approving Israeli arms deal worth $7 million in lead up to Gaza conflict. They include drones, combat aircraft, helicopters, and technology for weapons sites and spare parts for sniper rifles. Talking about a genocide, you've seen those pictures, the amount of land that's been taken, or the amount of people that have been killed by Israel. I mean, that's kind of a genocide is taking place that everybody turns their heads from. Entire Israel in reach of resistance missiles. Basically, Iran saying, hey, we can know where to hide. We can blow you off the map if we want to. An article that I caught accidentally on the Jerusalem Post from today: the last of the anti-Semites. The less anti-Semitism, the less hatred and violence directed against Jews and Israel. Says the clever use of propaganda by its enemies and anti-Semites the world over has caused the reputation, standing, and image of Jews in Israel to plummet. The Jewish, yeah, that's what it is, right? It's not them and their actions. The Jewish brand has been severely trashed to the point that Jewish people and the state of Israel are the most hated religious group in the nation on earth. So it'd be nice if it could just be complete assholes and run people's countries and their economies and financially enslave them and just carry out a Holocaust against people, and then, just say, oh, woe me, we didn't do anything. Why does everybody hate us so much? But that's why they have their own propaganda in media, on the internet, on television, in school, and just education curriculums and think tanks and all types of required education for people to go over and over about how these people are victims, and they receive reparations, and it's illegal to question anything as far as their history. So says that a distressing fact is that there is very little being done to counter it. After centuries of anti-Semitism and now anti-Israelism, it is high time that Israel and the Jews took positive and decisive action to fight these evil twins. So they must confront anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism with the ingenuity, halt their spread, and eventually eliminate them. Sorry about that. So another article that came across, just happenstance from today, that kind of ties in with all this. U.S. among only 3 countries at the United Nations officially backing Nazism and Holocaust denial. See, this article is coming from Blacklisted News, and the way that they worded this title is not really cool, because it's not saying that they're backing Nazism and denying the Holocaust. It's just saying that they're not going to propose a bill that was going to condemn racist fascism or Nazism or condemn denial of Germany. Basically, any type of freedom of thought or speech that should still exist, whether you agree with it or not, they want to wipe that off the map. So there was 3 against, but surprisingly, when you go in there and you click on the link, you'll find that almost all of the countries in Europe and countries like Australia and Canada that were involved in World War II were basically, they abstained from the vote. So the people are actually not involved in it, like Africa and South America countries and third world countries. They were all voting yes, yes, yes. And the countries that were involved, Europe, they just didn't really vote. And then the only ones that voted that were a part of the war that I saw, yes, was Russia. So these people are pretty powerful. They're not just little old victims and little's being done. They're doing a lot, and they're always working hard behind the scenes. And it's crap like this that they're doing, trying to pass a resolution to just condense something altogether. So anyways, that's pretty much all I have for you for this video, but it is kind of scary coming up in the next couple of years as far as the outlook, and not really unpredictable as far as the Republicans winning this past election and Obama by himself, and then they'll get a Republican president in there, whether it's another type of McCain or basically another a Zionist is what they are, and support their interest and support big wars and stuff like that. A lot of death, a lot of blood, a lot of money, and you don't really have much to gain from it, but they'll do things to get your attention to focus on something, whether it's human rights or whatever, to get you thinking that you have some kind of interest, invested interest in this issue, when you have no interest. You can only lose from it. Even if you don't go over there and fight yourself, like Rand Paul, yeah, we need to get into a war. It's like, hey, asshole, you going to go over there and pick up an AK or an M16 and go over there and start fighting ISIS? No, you're not. You know? It's like, why don't you stop supporting people who piss the world off, and why don't you stop supporting terrorism and then start there and see what happens? I guess lastly, too, because you're talking about Ukraine. The whole Ukraine thing, because it's a proxy war, it's just kind of funny because the U.S. supposedly supported this Nazi regime, as they call it, in Ukraine, and it's really run by Jews, is what it is. It's not Russian, but Jewish billionaires that are running Ukraine right now, instead of, say, maybe Jews in Russia that were billionaires. But I don't know as far as the whole Russian thing goes. I think it's just more of, it's in their sphere of influence, Ukraine is, and they do kind of deserve to have some influence in there, and the globalists from the West, or really just the globalists in general, want to take that from them. But you really got to be able to read through the lines when you see Jews supporting Nazis to carry out their plans. Because when you do, then you see articles like this, and you just kind of laugh. So anyways, this is GGN. I'm Darko. Thank you.